Okay, in this video lecture, we'll discuss the spoiled units, defective units, scrap material, and waste material in a job order cost system. So the common in these units are they do not meet the standards set by your customer, which means, let us say, you are in a manufacturing business and merong order sa iyo ang mga customer mo. So, obviously, what you need to do is to comply doon sa lahat ng requirements ng kanilang orders. And in the event na you were able to comply with what they want and what they need, then whatever we process or whatever we produce, once it is completed, it will be forwarded to the finished goods inventory. However, not at all times, lahat ng ginagawa natin would result to a completed or finished goods uh, meeting the standards of your customer. That's why merong nag-exist or nagka-come up na ganitong mga klase ng units. Now, these terms, spoiled, defective, scrap, and waste materials are not synonymous and they should not be used interchangeably. So let us try to understand what these terms mean. For the spoiled goods or spoiled units, these are units that do not meet production standards and are either sold for their salvage value or discarded. When spoiled units are discovered, they are taken out of production and no further work is performed on them. So, ibig sabihin, hindi nila na-meet yung nire-require ng customer mo and you have the option. Kung yung spoiled goods ay nasa condition pa na pwede siyang maibenta, of course, the value would not be the same as that of a completed finished product. Pero if there is a salvage value, no, pwede pa siyang maibenta at a certain amount, at a minimal amount, then it can be sold or it can be entirely discarded. No. So when you discover, syempre nagkakaroon tayo ng mga quality assurance or quality checking. So if you found out that if you discover the spoiled units, they are to be taken out of production. Wala nang further processes or further work na ipe-perform on them. And that is different from a defective units. Kasi si defective units, hindi rin niya na-meet yung production standard, but upon discovering na meron tayong defective units, there can be processes that can be done further in order to be to make it as a saleable product. No, so ibig sabihin, dun sa defective units, kung si spoiled units ay ibebenta mo na siya as is or di kaya i-discard mo na, si defective units, pwede pang merong processing na mangyari sa kanya. You can process it further. And since you're going to process it further, in order na maging saleable siya, kasi nga defective siya, so kailangan, para may ma-recover naman tayo doon, we will try our best para maging saleable siya. So meron kang mga production process pa rin na gagawin sa kanya. And doing so would require additional cost on the point of view of the company. For the scrap material, ito naman mga leftover to sa production process. It cannot be put back into production for the same purpose. So yung sample natin, ritaso ng tela, you are manufacturing clothes and pants, pero meron kang mga excess materials or mga leftover tela due to sa pagkakat mo ng tela mo, merong mga ritaso. So yung mga ritaso yun, yung mga small pieces ng tela na yun, na out of pagkakat natin, that cannot be put back into production for the same purpose. Hindi mo na siya magagawang damit or pants. But they can be usable for a different purpose of production process or may be sold to outsiders for a nominal amount. No? Ang waste materials naman, leftover din siya, pero wala na siyang further use or wala na rin siyang resale value. Therefore, it will be dispose and may require cost for their disposal. No? So yun po yung um, apat na items na pwedeng mangyari sa materials mo. Pwede siyang ma-spoiled, pwede siyang maging defective, yung inventory natin, pwede pong maging scrap material, at pwede pong maging waste materials. Now, since may possibility po na mag-exist yung mga items na yan, kailangan nating alamin how are we going to account for them. So, in terms of the spoiled materials, it depends on the reason bakit nagkaroon ng spoilage. It can be charged to specific job or charged to all production. So when we classify it as being chargeable to specific job, it is used if the reason of the spoilage is the job itself, because it requires exacting specifications or a difficult, intricate, or complicated manufacturing process. So kung yung complexity nung job itself ang reason kung bakit uh, hindi natin magawang ma-meet yung nire-require ng job itself, that is chargeable to specific job, and the entry to recognize the spoiled goods is to debit the spoiled goods and to credit work in process. Now, if you will recall, kini-credit natin ang work in process kapag yan ay natatapos na. No? Ang common or ang basic entry natin in our cost accounting cycle and job order costing is we credit work in process at ang normal partner niyan ay finished goods. However, dahil nga po yung goods na natapos ay hindi naman na-meet ang standard ng customer mo, you cannot classify it as finished goods kasi hindi mo siya ibebenta as finished goods. Now, tatanggalin mo siya sa work in process kasi i-recognize mo na siya as spoiled goods. Magkano po or what is the amount to be debited sa spoiled goods? Ito po ay equal to the number of units spoiled multiplied by the estimated sales value per unit. Kasi pwede naman yung spoiled goods na yun, pwede pa rin naman nga siyang makaroon ng salvage value. So, pagkano naman yung kanyang salvage value, that is the amount to be recognized as spoiled goods, debit, and a credit to work in process. Now, if the reason is considered to be normal to the process. Anong ibig sabihin? By the nature of the process, normal lang na magkaroon ng spoilage. So kapag ka ganon, chargeable yon sa lahat ng production. No? With this method, all units manufactured during the period are charged with an additional cost which is added to the factory overhead rate. So the unit cost originally charged will not increase anymore, even if there are spoiled units discovered later on. So what is the journal entry to do that? You debit your spoiled goods, you debit your factory overhead control, and you credit your work in process. So, anong ibig sabihin nito? In terms of computation, ang spoiled goods, i-debit mo siya, katulad lang din kanina. Number of units na na-spoil, you multiply it by the estimated sales value per unit mo. Pero, dahil nga normal lang naman yung spoilage sa process, posible kasi na ang nalagay nating cost doon sa na-spoiled na yon, halimbawa, lagyan natin ng value. Let us say, the total materials, labor, and overhead related doon sa goods na na-spoil ay 100 pesos. Pero yung value lang ng spoiled goods or yung sales value ng spoiled goods ay 80. No? Kung kanina, kung chargeable siya sa specific job, you debit spoiled goods 80 and you credit work in process 80. But in this case, since the spoilage is normal, you debit your spoiled goods at 80, you credit your work in process at the entire amount of 100, and the difference will be debited to the factory overhead control. Okay? The loss pa rin kasi yun, gawa ng ang nagastos mo, 100, di ba? Tapos, ang possible lang na ma-recover mo doon kung sakaling mabenta yung spoiled goods ay 80. So there is a loss of 20, but that loss is chargeable to factory overhead control. If the number of units spoiled exceed the limit set by the company, or if the reason is not considered normal to the process, the loss on the spoiled goods is chargeable to a loss account. No? So kanina, dahil nga siya ay normal, chinarge natin sa factory overhead control. Pero kapag yung spoiled goods ay makonsider na natin na abnormal o ibig sabihin baka nagkaroon na ng error talaga ang production. So kapag ganun, hindi natin siya i-charge sa factory overhead but instead i-charge natin siya to a loss account. So those are the methods in accounting for spoilage. Again, depende po if it is chargeable to a specific job or chargeable to all production. Ano po ang basis natin? The reason for the spoilage. If the spoilage is due to the specifications of the customer, chargeable yan sa job. Kung yan ay normal sa process, chargeable sa factory overhead control. Pero kung halimbawa po ay abnormal yan, yung loss na yon, chargeable siya sa loss account. Okay, dito naman po, methods naman for accounting for defective materials. So dito, ganun din, can be chargeable to specific job if the reason for the defect is the job itself. So dahil nga, sabi natin kapag defective yan, ibig sabihin, pwede pang mag-process ulit para ma-convert mo yung defective product into saleable condition. So dahil ipoprocess mo siya ulit, normal entry tayo. You add work in process and you debit your work in process and you credit the appropriate manufacturing cost element to it. So materials, payroll, and factory overhead applied. Pero kung yan ay chargeable to all production or ang reason po ng defect is normal to the process at hindi naman nag-exceed sa normal limit, ay di instead na i-charge natin siya sa work in process, lahat ng tagastusin mo, materials, labor, and overhead, i-charge natin sa factory overhead control. No? So parang kung titingnan natin, ma'am, kapag po pala chargeable to specific job, work in process yung nakadebit. Pero kapag chargeable to all production, factory overhead control. Okay? So yun lang po for the defective. No. Bakit may mga ganito? Bakit po ganito ang nagiging entry natin? Kasi again, ang defective product or defective unit ay can be processed further in order to convert the defective item into a saleable goods. The third one is the accounting for scrap material. So the cost accounting system provide methods of costing for scrap. Paano po yun? Kung ang scrap materials have commonly been accounted for can be, if the scrap recovered can be traced to a specific job, so you just debit the materials and then you credit the work in process. Again, specific job, kaya present yung work in process account natin. Ma'am, bakit po nakakredit siya? Kasi initially kasi nung pinut mo into production yung materials, dinebit mo yung work in process. Kaso nga lang, hindi lahat ng materials nagamit. Merong na scrap doon. So halimbawa, yung materials na pinut mo into process ay worth 10 pesos. Tapos merong 50 cents doon na scrap. So yung 50 cent, kailangan mong alisin siya sa work in process. Kung siya naman ay not traceable to specific job, ang entry mo doon ay debit mo pa rin yung scrap materials, i-credit mo ngayon sa miscellaneous income. Mami, bakit po income kung meron kang scrap materials? Kasi nga, maaari mo siyang mabenta yung scrap materials. Paano naman po kung ang scrap ay recovered from the factory supplies? So, kung factory supplies yan, alam naman natin, factory supplies is an example of factory overhead. So, ang original entry niyan, naka-debit yan sa FOH control, no? Pero dahil nga na-scrap siya, alisin mo siya sa factory overhead control, tapos iset up mo yung scrap materials na account. Pagdating naman po sa waste material, so dahil nga yan ay waste na, wala ka nang magagamit siya, hindi mo na yan mabebenta, or should I say, wala ka ng, it's literally waste. So, kailangan mo yan, i-dispose mo na yan. So, paano ang entry doon? If the cost of disposing the waste materials is allocated to all jobs, edi you debit factory overhead and you credit a payable, no, of or whatever cost you are incurring sa pagdi-dispose ng waste material. Kapag ka naman yan ay allocated to a specific job, edi just like our guide kanina, pag specific, work in process ka. Kapag ka ikaw ay allocated to all, factory overhead. Okay, so that's the accounting for our um, defective, spoiled, scrap, and waste materials. So thank you for watching this video lecture.